Hello YouTubers, welcome to the channel. It's all about racing. Today we're going to take a look at and talk about the evolution of Ferrari from the F430 GTC, the green car that you see on the right, through the 458, the red car you see in the middle, and the more recognizable 488 Ferrari that you see in the white on the far right hand side of you. Two of these models are made by Fujimi, the green and the red one, and the third model is by Looksmart. And this will take a look at the years 2004 through 2022 and how these cars have evolved and become the great race cars that they are today. So let's go ahead and start with car number one. That would be the F340. The F340 was manufactured between 2004 and 2012 and basically raced in what they call the GT2 competition. The body style, as are all three of these, was done by Pininfarina, a common partner with Ferrari. Had a 6-speed manual transmission, had a 4.3-liter V8, produced 560 horsepower, and could do 202 miles per hour. Amazing for a car when you think about it. It was extremely successful, as I had mentioned in one of my other videos. It won the Sebring 12-hour in 2007 and 2009, 10, 11, and 12. As well as the 2009 24 Hours of Le Mans and the 2009 Petite Le Mans. A great car, really cool body when you take a look at it. I think a rather remarkable looking car from its time. The nose not quite as rounded as the other cars you're going to see here, but basically the same styling. These all being mid-engine cars, naturally with the engine mounted in the back. And as you can clearly see here, there it is right there. And all of these cars uniquely have open engine compartments, which means you can see them, which I think is kind of cool. You don't get to see that with many of the others. Now let's take a quick look at the Ferrari 458. Okay, this is the Ferrari 458. This came out in 2014 and ran through 2011 and ran through 2016. Michael Schumacher actually was consulted to help make the driving compartment a little bit more, I guess you could say, bearable for the drivers than it was in the F340. They made about 150 of these over its racing career. It had a 4.5-liter V8 that produced about 460 horsepower. It won the 2012 and 2014 24 Hours of Le Mans. It also won the 2012 12 Hours of Sebring, the 2011 and 2012 Petite Le Mans, and won the 2011 manufacturer's title. An absolutely gorgeous car, and I think when you take a look at the styling, you'll see how it more closely resembles that of the 488 than the 340 in just a moment. But there's a look at the top of it and a look at the engine compartment. Let's take a look at the 488, and then we'll take a look at all three of them together. Now you can see body-wise and engine-wise, this car has evolved significantly from the 458. The 488 was raced between 2016 and 2022. It has now been replaced by the Ferrari 296, which I think personally is kind of a letdown. I really like this one. This was my favorite of the four of them out at this time. This car had a 4.0-liter V8 turbocharged and could do 600 horsepower. Through its racing career, it had over 45 wins, 24 poles in both the IMSA, the World Endurance Championship, and the European Le Mans Championship. And this particular car is an LMG GT3 spec car, which is a little bit more sophisticated than the 458 and the F430, respectively. Again, nice clean looks. It does have the open engine bay, as you had in the other three. Now let's take a look at all three of them together and see how they kind of size up body-wise, shape-wise, and everything else. And here you can see all three. We'll start with the F430 first. Good, nice, clean lines. Beautifully done. Kind of a deep, round nose, I guess, so to speak. Notice the fender flares are fairly prominent, and you can see the rear air intake to channel airflow over the brakes and the rear wheels. Notice that the rear spoiler is not, the rear wing, while it's not particularly large, it's rather low. It's not as high as you're going to see on the 488, but nevertheless, beautiful, classical, good-looking styling. I think just an amazing car. Now we'll take a look at the 458. As you can see, the nose is a little bit more rounded. than you had on the F430. The headlights also changed significantly. They're drawn back in the style that is commoniscent of the 488 as well. Mirrors look the same. Body shape pretty much, fairly similar from that standpoint of view. If you take a look as it rolls back, again, you can see that, nice big rear wing on it. Again, not as high as you're going to see on the 48 here in just a moment. And now we'll pull back and take a look at the 488. And here you get a good look at it, and as you can see, there have been some pretty significant changes. Much more aerodynamically balanced car than the others. The front spoiler looks significantly different than the other two, much more advanced. You've got dive planes on the side of it. The headlights look very similar to that of the 458s, and the body shape looks, quite frankly, and quite similar. If you take a look all the way to the back, you can see those rear air intakes all the way just in front of the fender on this particular car. Very similar to the other two. And if you take a look at how it looks from front to rear, very much similar, except notice how much higher that rear wing is than on the other two cars. Significantly different in that regard. Now let's take a look at them from the side. And here's a look at all three of them, basically nose to tail. Look fairly similar at first glance. If you take a look at the F430, again, that distinctive Ferrari styling, not quite as sleek as the 458 and the 488, but nevertheless nice and clean. Almost, quite frankly, I think it almost looks more like a Lamborghini in this shape than do the others, except the front end is a little too long, and I guess the best way to describe it is high would be a good way of describing it, but nevertheless very similar body shape. Here's a look at the 458. Again, it looks a little bit cleaner. The nose looks like it's not quite as high, even though it probably is, but it looks a little bit cleaner, smoother, still gorgeous lines, just like the F430, which, these cars all look so like each other. It's no surprise that they've evolved the way that they have. And then here is a look at the 488. Again, the same sweeping lines, much bigger air intake, much more, I guess it's higher, and it's more, its placement is in front of the rear wheel more than it is in the other two cars. It's also substantially larger. And as you can see, it's got that big, huge rear wing on there. And we talked about that, as well as the front spoiler, that are basically aero changes that have occurred over the past 30 years. And it made all three of these great race cars in their time. Now we'll take a quick look at the rear end of both of them. All right, here we're looking at the three generations of cars, and tell me what you see similar there. Shape, very, very similar. You went essentially from 4 taillights on the F430 to 2 on the 458 as well as the 488. But basically the same shape. You do have the exhausts a little bit wider apart, I guess, and lower. You don't have a big rear diffuser on the back of this car. As I said, the rear wing is not placed as high, but the shape looks almost identical to that of the 458. Here you do have the exhaust. You can see they're virtually stacked right next to each other. Same basic shape. You've gone from 4 taillights to just 2 taillights on it. The rear wing doesn't appear to be any larger or higher than it was on the F430. Again, no massive diffuser on it. And then you take a look at the 488, and wow. Times have changed, advances have been made. You still have the same 2 headlights, 2 taillights as you did on the 458. The diffuser is much larger and much wider, respectively. The rear wing is placed substantially higher on the car. It's mounted further back, but it's much higher on the car. And you can tell it's gone through, 30 years of significant improvement and advancement. The engines, what I love about all three of these Ferraris is the engines are visible from the rear if you're able to take a look at them. We'll take a look at that 8-cylinder on the F430. Beautiful engine. I'll try to maneuver it so you can see a few more details of it. You know, the air intakes and everything else as it goes into the engine bay itself. Very, very nice. Very, very beautifully done. This is the 458. A little bit different. You see the radiators to the side of this. Looks a bit more compact, but again, it's a V8. You know, essentially very similar to power of that of the F430. And then you have the turbocharged V8 on the 488. And this is probably the one that's more familiar to most of you. These are the ones that have been the race for the last, several years before the 296, respectively. But big old radiators on the side. You can see all the air intakes and just the detail that these two model makers, both Fujimi and that Looksmart, have done, I think, are absolutely remarkable. They're beautiful models. I think, the shape of the cars, and how they've evolved are very, very similar. Very, very good-looking cars, all three. Unmistakable. Anyhow, there's a look at all three of them, kind of side by side, so to speak. Beautiful cars all, starting with the F430 that we talked about, all the way on the rear here, the green one. Advancing to the 458 GT3 car that you see there in the middle, the luxury racing car. And then you have the JMW Motorsports 488. Beautiful cars, all designed by Pininfarina. All successful race cars in their own right. The next chapter will be the 296, and when that chapter is done, we'll have to add that to this as well. Thanks for watching.